Hi, this is Michael Buffer, and welcome to the BoxHard Podcast.
Hello, everyone. This is Mikey Garcia.
Yo, it's your boy, the odd guy himself, Malik King Scott.
Hi, I'm Charlie Edwards.
This is Fast Eddie Chambers, and you're listening to the BoxHard Podcast with my main man, Joey Coastman.
Hello everybody and welcome to episode 109 of the BoxHard Podcast. I'm your host Joey Coastman. I'm joined this time by Diego, a man that has obviously stepped in the shoes of Ayaz before when he's been absent. Ayaz is out with a little bit of a family issue, and Diego's a man that of course used to be in connection with the Boxing Voice, but to me he is the knight in shining armour. He always comes through and saves the day. Diego, thank you so much for coming on once again.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, Joey. Thank you for having me on.
Hey, it's my pleasure, sir. It's my pleasure. Right, let's roll with it. Let's dive straight into the review part of the show from last week. I'm going to start over in the Victoria Warehouse in Trafford Road, Manchester. A bit of a strange sounding venue, this one. Just one fight to mention over here. Craig Cunningham, the guy that actually beat Anthony Ogogo in Ogogo's last fight where he looked absolutely awful. I was quite excited to see what Craig Cunningham could do with that win as well, and unfortunately he racked up a loss here to a guy called Lucas Ndufalama, who I've never really heard of, but it was some kind of weird card up in Manchester. I think it was actually billed as like Britain against Africa. It seemed like a lot of British fighters were fighting African fighters, and unfortunately Craig Cunningham actually lost, so it was a points loss over 10 rounds. So Craig Cunningham now 19-2, and the guy he fought actually was 10-1, and he lost to a guy who had an awful record as well. So a bit of a strange one there. Right, moving on from that to the Royal Highland Centre in Edinburgh, Scotland, United Kingdom. This one, of course, was on Channel 5 Live. I'm going to just scoot really through the undercard real quick. A guy called Lee McGregor made his debut. It was a TKO in round 1 for him. He's talking about perhaps fighting for the British title sometime next year. You know, it might be a bit of a step too quickly for me, honestly. On that bill also, Chantel Cameron looked good. She moved to 4-0 with a TKO in round 3 against Edith Ramos. This one was for the vacant IBO Intercontinental Female Super Featherweight title. So good stuff there for Chantel Cameron. Of the women coming through at the moment, I think she's one of the prettier ones, if I'm being completely honest, boxing aside. Also on this bill, Jason Easton 10-0 took on Joseph Zadrnik. This is a fight I don't think I saw. I don't remember seeing that one, but anyway, Jason Easton picked up the win unanimously over 12 rounds and also picked up the IBO Intercontinental Super Lightweight title. He's now 11-0, Jason Easton, and his opponent, he took the O of Joseph Zadrnik, who's now 9-1. I think that's really it. I mean, well, Martin Bakoli Ilunga was on the bill as well, also a man that's being highly touted, a heavyweight, of course. He moved to 10-0 with a KO in round 1 against previously undefeated Ali Baghouz, who was 10-0 with one draw. Some of these names are quite hard to pronounce here. This one was also for the vacant IBO Continental Heavyweight title. Anyway, the main event on this bill, Josh Taylor 10-0. That's the man we came to watch, we came to see. It was for the WBC Silver Super Lightweight title, the title that he won off O'Hara Davies, and he took on Miguel Vasquez, the former world champion. Miguel Vasquez 39-5 in search of win number 40. Diego, I know that you didn't see this fight, so I'm just going to whiz through it, but I was saying on last week's show there's some crazy facts attached to Miguel Vasquez, of course, former world champion, and one of the facts that I really like, and again, for people that listened last week, they're going to have heard this, so I'm going to try to kind of rap through it as quick as I can. Vasquez actually made his debut. He actually fought Canelo on his debut, which was quite crazy, and he actually only lost a split decision. It was really close. He then went on to have 18 wins, and then he took on Tim Bradley. He lost that unanimously. After that, he put 3 wins together back-to-back before rematching Canelo. On the undercard, when he took on Canelo for the second time, Canelo's 3 of Canelo's brothers made their debuts, and all of them lost, which is mad. But Canelo actually beat Vasquez convincingly this time, a unanimous decision over 10 rounds. After that, Vasquez put together 13 wins in a row, including becoming the first man to beat Breedis Prescott, who once upon a time knocked out Amir Khan. He also beat Leonardo Zapovigna, Marcito Gesta and Denis Shafakov. All guys there were unbeaten, and also inside the 13-win streak. He won the IBF Lightweight title and successfully defended it 6 times before losing to Mickey Bay on a split decision on a Mayweather undercard. Since then, he's had 6 fights, winning 5 and only losing 1 to Argenis Mendez. So it was a real big step up for Josh Taylor, and I tell you what, boy oh boy did he deliver. I won't say I was surprised. I think that, Josh Taylor's such a talent. I mean, the way he took apart O'Hara Davies was certainly impressive, and this one was his real kind of first test. We didn't really know how good O'Hara was. To say that he was like a world contender, I think is a bit of a stretch, but this was a guy that had never been stopped previously, and this was a guy that of course had reigned the world for quite a while at some point. Obviously I think he'd probably seen better days, but yeah, what an impressive performance from Josh Taylor. I mean, he does what he does. He was a taller guy, he was the bigger guy out of the two, and I thought there's a chance he may just sit back and box this guy, but he didn't. He actually brought the fight to him. He was the man on the front foot for the entire fight, to be honest, and he actually got the KO in round 9. It was a beautiful, beautiful punch as well that concluded the fight, and I've got to say, I'm so excited about Josh Taylor. I think the Scottish fight fans have got so much to look forward to, especially the way he's been put on terrestrial TV for everybody to watch. I think it's brilliant what they're doing with him, and long may it continue, to be honest. Credit to all people involved with him, the McGuigan team and the rest. Moving over now to the Metro Radio Arena in Newcastle. This was the Frank Warren show, the rematch, of course. It was billed no ifs, no buts. Of course, we all know about the headbutt or the punch, depends who you ask, in the first fight between Liam Smith and Liam Williams. This time, it really didn't live up to expectations. The fight didn't have as much action as the first one. I think it was... for the first few rounds anyway, it was quite a cagey affair. Liam Smith, of course, going in with a record of 25-1 with 1 draw. Liam Williams 16-1 with 1 draw. I think that the first couple of rounds, I gave him... I can't really remember how I scored it completely. Completely. I can't remember how I scored it for the whole thing. I think the middle rounds, in my opinion, I think that Liam Smith actually came alive a little bit in the middle rounds, whereas I think Liam Williams started quite well, just like in the first fight, but it wasn't as apparent. I think there were still some close rounds at the beginning of the fight. Some people gave those rounds to Liam Smith, but I think that Liam Williams probably started the better. He was able to use his jab a lot better than last time, I felt. Both guys were, landing uppercuts, which was quite impressive. The right uppercut was a great punch for both men. But no, Liam Williams, I don't know what it was, man. He just looked a little bit flat. I think maybe he was possibly, in the scare that he may run out of steam down the course of the rounds. I think he kind of paced himself a little bit. And in the middle of the fight, like I say, Liam Smith really brought the fight to him and clearly won those rounds. And then in the later part of the fight, Liam Williams kind of came on strong. And then the last couple of rounds, I think Liam Smith probably won the last 2 rounds pretty clearly. It's a shame because I'm a big Liam Williams fan. I really wanted him to do it. I felt like, there was some serious injustice in the first fight, and unfortunately he wasn't able to capitalise on his second opportunity here. There won't be a third fight, I'm guessing. Some people actually gave it to Williams though, which I didn't find it hard to believe, but online, on Twitter, people were absolutely going crazy, saying that it was a robbery and stuff like that. I don't think you could really say it was a robbery. It was a majority decision in favour of Liam Smith. He's now 26-1 with 1 draw. Liam Williams now 16-2 with 1 draw. Much better than his record suggests on paper, Liam Williams, but... there was a point in the fight where Liam Williams' trainer, Gary Lockett, of course a Welshman, of course he's in the corner of Liam Williams, he actually said to his fighter that he's a couple of rounds down. Barry Jones, a Welshman, a very proud Welshman, on the commentary was saying that Williams was down in the fight, and he actually gave the fight to Liam Smith. And in the post-fight interview in the ring, Liam Williams himself actually said that he thought the right man won in Smith. But despite all that, people were still taking to Twitter to go crazy about it. It's funny how divided this sport is. It depends who you ask. It depends, how they look at it. It's a mad sport, but, it's a sport that we love. Moving down this bill once again, Thomas Patrick Ward, 21-0, moved to 22-0. I think he's a fighter that's got quite a bright future. He defended successfully his British super bantamweight title against Sean Davis. Sean Davis now 13-2. It was a unanimous decision in favour of Thomas Patrick Ward. Josh Lever on the bill again against Glenn Foote. This was like the grudge match of the bill. It was for the IBF East and West Europe Super Lightweight title. Josh Lever moved to 13-0. Glenn Foote now 21-3. Like I said, there was some real bad blood between the pair on fight week. I think I'm not sure if they made up after the fight. I can't remember if they did, but maybe they did. I can't really remember now, but yeah, I mean, Lever was down in the second round. It was a beautiful, beautiful shot by Glenn Foote. I mean, he put it together. He telegraphed it really well. It was set up with the jab. It was just a simple 1-2 straight down the middle. And Josh Lever really went down quite heavy. He took his time getting back up as well, which I think was a clever thing to do. Foote actually had a point deducted in the 6th round. I think that was because he spat his gum shield out, and the referee thought it was intentional. I think he even tried to catch his gum shield as it fell out his mouth. I'm not quite sure that he did mean to do it, but anyway, that point there, being took away actually played a part in the decision. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I can't remember this fight. There was so many on, but no, it was a good fight. It was a good fight. Some people saying it was fight of the weekend. I think, the bits that I did see of it, because I was, channel surfing a lot during this one, and no, it seemed to be a good fight. But moving on from that, Mark Heffron moved to 18-0 against Lewis Taylor, who was really Mark Heffron's first step up. It was a TKO in round 7 for Heffron. Lewis Taylor now 19-5 with 1 draw. Mark Heffron, as I said there, 18-0, a fighter that I'm really looking forward to seeing his future pan out. Unfortunately, the fight wasn't on TV, which I thought was quite shocking. Also on this bill, the final fight to mention here, Nathan Gorman moved to 11-0. He also picked up the vacant WBC International Silver Heavyweight title. He took on the previously undefeated Mohamed Saltby, who was 13-0. We wanted to see Nathan Gorman take on Nick Webb. It wasn't to be, but it was a TKO in round 5 for Gorman. He looked pretty good, but I'd like to see him in there really, with somebody that somebody with a genuine threat level to him. They're talking about the Daniel Dubois fight in 2018. If I was him, I'd stay well away from Daniel Dubois. All respect to him. But anyway, moving over now to the States at the Save Mart Arena in Fresno, California, USA. I'm just going to fly through this one. Who was on this bill? Jose Carlos Ramirez, 20-0, put his WBC Continental America's Super Lightweight title on the line against the previously undefeated Mike Yes Indeed Reed, who was 23-0. Boy, oh boy, Mike Reed was down in the second round, and he was stopped in the second round. He was taking a bit of a beating. I won't really say that he seemed to be too hurt, but he got put down by a good shot. He then kind of got back up, and he ended up on the ropes, and Jose Ramirez was just throwing tons and tons of punches, and he kind of forced a stoppage simply because Mike Reed wasn't really throwing back. He was covering up. He was being hit all over his torso, really, the head, the body, all over the place. And really, really impressive finish there from Jose Ramirez. He's now become a fighter that I'm really looking forward to see his future pan out. I mean, Mike Reed was a guy that I felt, he's quite small for the weight. I mean, he certainly looks small in there against Ramirez, and I'm not quite sure it's his suited weight. I mean, Mike Reed is good, but in his last fight, he didn't really look too impressive, and in this fight, it was one where he just couldn't get going. I think Mike Reed's he's not really got the power to keep these big boys off, and I think that Jose Ramirez really just, an unbelievable win there. He's now 21-0, and he's going to be, if I'm not mistaken, I think he's going to probably be ranked now with the WBC. He might have even been ranked before that, so credit to him. Great win. And the main event on this one, of course, this was on Box Nation, by the way, at the early hours of Sunday morning. The main event, Artur Beterbiev 11-0 took on Enrico Colin 23-1. I actually picked on this fight. I went last week with a Beterbiev knockout because Beterbiev had knocked out everybody that he'd fought in his 11 fights thus far. Ayaz went with Beterbiev to win on points, and I tell you what, Ayaz came very close to getting that right. It was a funny situation. I mean, Beterbiev didn't really look too good. I think Colin was a little bit tougher than what we gave him credit for, really, going into the fight. Colin was down twice in round 12, and I think they actually waved it off. I mean, the first knockdown I don't think was a big one. I think the second one was I don't know, they were knockdowns, but they weren't seem like he was on the verge of being absolutely put to sleep, if you know what I mean. And I think there was only about 23 seconds in the round from it going the full distance. So I think the referee kind of, I don't know what it was. I don't want to say he wanted to stop the fight, but I think it was a tad premature. I don't want to be too harsh, too critical there, because I think, he may well have been properly knocked out, but he just I don't know, I couldn't really see it happening in the final 23 seconds there. I think he deserved to go the distance, especially or at least given the chance to go the distance, especially in a world title fight of this level. It was, of course, for the IBF vacant world light heavyweight title, one of the belts that Andre Ward gave up. Moving over now to the Nassau Coliseum in Uniontown, New York, USA. This one was the Matchroom USA launch, if you like. On the bill, Conor Benn moved to 10-0, a KO in round 2 against Brandon Cenudo, who was 7-6. Conor Benn he did what he does, really. I mean, he got in there. I think Cenudo came to win. I think there was parts of the fight where Cenudo was coming forward and putting the jab on Conor Benn, but ultimately Conor Benn stopped it with a brutal body shot. It was really well timed. I think people got to kind of get off Conor Benn's back a little bit. He hasn't really had the amateur experience. Of course, he's got big shoes to fill, but we've got to kind of step back a little bit and go, hey, look, he's not his old man. He's just really starting out in many ways, and yeah, he's now 10-0, but let's give him a little bit of time. I quite like Conor Benn. He's been very active. We like to see that. And while he was out the ring for quite a while with a back injury, I think it was, or a nose injury, something like that. He was out with an injury, and he really come back looking brilliant. Like, he really impressed me when I saw him come back. He seems to have, really grown as a fighter now. So I'm really excited for him. Also on this bill, Cletus Seldin, 20-0. I didn't know too much about him. A little bit of a throwback fighter. He took on Roberto Ortiz, 35-1 with 2 draws. This was a real step up for Cletus Seldin. Roberto Ortiz had only lost one fight previously, and it was to Lucas Matisse, a man that can put anything to sleep. So Cletus Seldin actually knocked Roberto Ortiz out in the 3rd round. It was a TKO. Ortiz was down twice in the 1st round as well. So really impressive stuff there from Cletus Seldin. He's a guy that I think there's a lot to like about him. But now the 2 main fights on this bill. I'm going to go over to you, Diego. Jarrell Miller, of course, big baby, 19-0 with 1 draw, took on Mariusz Wach. Mariusz Wach, 33-2. His only 2 losses was to Povetkin and Vladimir Klitschko. So, but yeah, no, he was, he's a durable guy, obviously, Wach. I mean, he came in not really in the best of shape, I don't think. I know he's done many rounds with Anthony Joshua. I think that really Wach's, I don't know, he just kind of reminded me a little bit. I want to say he reminded me a little bit of, I don't want to be too harsh, but he kind of reminded me a little bit of Helenius when he fought Dillian White the other week. He just sort of came to survive. I mean, he's a much bigger guy, and he wasn't using his reach or anything. It was just seemed to be one of those fights, really. What did you make of it anyway, Diego?
Yeah, I mean, it was an interesting fight. The thing is, what you have with Jarrell Miller, you've got a special type of athlete there, because at first glance, he doesn't look as what we're accustomed to now, the jacked up, all lean sort of heavyweights that we're sort of, let's say, Wilder, Joshua that we're seeing. He's a bit different, but what you can see is that his punch rate, his work output it's really impressive. I know that, I mean, there's been quite a lot of criticism that, from what I've heard and what I've seen online, with regards to his performance this Saturday. But the thing is, I think, taking into consideration the weight he has cut down from his previous fight, it's quite a lot, and also the fact that with his size as well. I mean, I know he's used to fighting fighters which are much taller than him, but I think just because of his weight, his body structure, maybe that has sort of some bearing on the way he fights his fights, basically. And so that's why I find. Although I could criticize certain parts of his fighting style on Saturday, I think it's interesting to see how he consistently stays on the fighter, pressures the fighter. He's got a slow pace about him, but he still gets the job done. And I think moving forward, I mean, if he improves and he still maintains this work rate, it'll be interesting to see him against a fighter who fades. For example, we know Anthony Joshua's got all the attributes, he's got all the talent, But a weakness which has been highlighted a lot is his tendency to fade later on. So maybe that would be an interesting point to see. And the fight, I mean, personally, I found the fight really interesting. I found the fight, at times it was a bit boring. You could see it sort of have an idea of what was going to be the end outcome, but it still was enough to keep me intrigued. Mariusz Wach, he's not the best of the best, not by far, but I think he's a durable fighter. I mean, there are similarities with him and Robert Helenius in the attitude they showed on that day, but I still think that given you have to be a type of fighter to beat these fighters at this stage of their career. And if Jarrell Miller wasn't maybe an above average fighter or a good fighter, he wouldn't have beat Mariusz Wach.
Yeah, I mean, you know, like you say, like you highlight there, you know, he hasn't really got the most best looking body. I think it's fair to say, you know, he's quite surprising about his punch output, and like you say, his work rate. He throws a lot of shots. And he doesn't really seem to tire too much. I mean, in this fight, I think there was times where he was being pushed back a little bit. He wasn't the stronger of the two, and I think that in some parts of it, he did look a little bit tired. But to get that knockout, you know, to get that knockout in round 9, I think it's quite an impressive thing there. I mean, Wach's corner, I mean, they were sort of, they were in there, like, you know, trying to get him to fight on, and to a certain extent I think he wanted to, but the referee just kept getting the doctors in. I don't know why. He just kept bringing the doctors onto the ropes, and I don't really know why, but I mean, it was unexpected. I think I actually picked Jarrell Miller to go the distance and win on a points decision, but yeah, it wasn't to be. He got the knockout there. But yeah, moving on from this fight now, moving on from that fight. But by the way, actually, just before we do, Diego, they're obviously talking about a potential fight down the line between Big Baby Miller and Dillian Whyte. I think that's an absolutely brilliant fight.
Definitely.
Who do you see winning that one if it comes down to it?
Personally, I think I see Jarrell Miller winning. I mean, I think Dillian Whyte, I wasn't impressed with his last fight. I mean, there's nothing really that impresses me about Dillian Whyte. I mean, when I saw that, when I was at the fight when I saw him against Anthony Joshua, and that sort of captivated me, and that sort of led me to continue following his career. But with Jarrell Miller, there's something that sort of impresses me, and that's just how he moves, the way he moves, at the size he is, and his output. But with Dillian Whyte, there's nothing really that impresses me. And after the Derek Chisora fight, I mean, it was a really impressive fight. It was a fight that was captivating, but what he showed against Robert Helenius doesn't really give me enough confidence to go ahead and give him my vote. And the thing is, something which is really which is good as well of this fight is the fact that they're both similar in that where they are at in their stage. I mean, Dillian Whyte, he's obviously ranked now number 1 in the WBC, which is good for him, and it will move him closer to getting the World Championship. But I mean, I think they're both sort of in a similar place. I mean, their character, the way they're sort of, the personality. And I also think in the way that they're fighters which the let's say the boxing hardcore fans want to see them fight, want to see them get involved, but they're sort of not, they still haven't broken through into the general public. So I think this would be a great fight for both of them.
Yeah, hopefully it does get made. I think it's a really good fight. Hopefully, I think they're talking about maybe a February date for Dillian Whyte. I'd really like to see that fight happen. Yeah, moving on to the main event now, and this is the final fight to mention from last week. The main event here, Daniel Jacobs, 32-2, took on the previously undefeated Luis Arias, 18-0. Luis Arias, a man that's been on this show quite a few times now. Luis Arias was telling me the other week that there's no way in the world he was going to lose the fight. And I tell you what, just the man's confidence, it kind of made me think, I can't really pick against him. I mean, he was so confident. It was hard to go against him. In the end, I actually picked Danny Jacobs to win by knockout, which didn't happen. But it was hard to go against Arias. I mean, when you actually saw them both in the ring, Danny Jacobs was clearly the much bigger guy. Luis Arias didn't really have the strength to kind of keep him off. He kept falling short of his shots, and he kept getting caught coming in. He didn't really stand in the ring like he said he was going to do. I don't want to criticise him too much. Like I say, I do like Luis Arias. But no, I think Danny Jacobs just really showed us once again that he really is one of the top guys at middleweight. I mean, aside from Canelo and Golovkin and maybe one or two of the others like Lemieux, Saunders, he really is right up there. Even though he hasn't got a belt, he really is one of the best guys. I mean, we saw him go into southpaw momentarily. He seems to be able to fight well out of both stances. I think he's really come on as a fighter, since those days where he got stopped by Pirog. I think he's just become such a really good fighter in the recent couple of years, really. Ever since I saw him take out Peter Quillin the way he did, I mean, ever since then he's just been really good. He arguably could have got the nod over Golovkin, and here, he just, in my opinion, I think he kind of shut out Luis Arias, who by the way, I think Luis Arias is a really talented guy. I mean, he didn't really get to show it in this one, but Luis Arias, in my opinion, is a man that could go on to win world titles. I think he's very, very skilled, and, the size was a big factor, I felt, but he did what he did, and he won very impressively. It wasn't the best fight at times. I think I was looking forward really to more action going into the fight, but listen, he did what he had to do, and it was a great performance. His first one, of course, under Eddie Hearn, and he got the job done, and he got the job done with an impressive shutout. So I mean, it was a good win. What did you make of it, Diego, before we wrap up part one?
Yeah, it was a good fight. Initially, I was going for Danny Jacobs. When I started seeing the press conferences and in the lead up to the fight in the last week, I actually ended up opting for Luis Arias. I thought he was gonna. I don't know. I thought that maybe he could have the possibility. I mean, of causing an upset. I mean, he's a fighter that was at the Mayweather boxing club, so he's got a good amount of talent. Not just because of that, but he's shown it in his previous fights. I think for me personally, I think the key difference here wasn't necessarily. I mean, you could see a clear distance between talent levels, but I think a lot of it was experience as well, because you've seen Danny Jacobs have difficulties with fighters which are less talented than, let's say, Luis Arias in Sergio Mora. So I think maybe experience played a major key in this fight, and I think that was possibly maybe what sort of shifted the fight towards Danny Jacobs even more. The size was a key factor. You could see it as soon as they started. You could see Danny Jacobs was the bigger guy. He looked the stronger guy, and in Luis Arias, you could see that maybe his fighting style, which is an aggressive fighting style, wasn't suited or didn't translate into this fight just because the other fighter was stronger or better than him in most areas where it was important for him to show his ability. So I think moving forward, I mean, personally, I think Luis Arias, I'd like to see him back on TV. I'd like to see him possibly against someone like Charlo. I don't know how viable that is, but that'd be a good fight. And Danny Jacobs, I mean, I personally rank him alongside Golovkin. I think he would beat Canelo. Canelo's a talented guy, but I think Danny Jacobs is the type of fighter that would possess and present difficulties for Canelo. So I mean, there's a lot of things happening right now in the middleweight division. We have to see what happens with Lemieux, Billy Joe, and then going into the next year, we can see how it all plays out. But I mean, without a doubt, you can see that the middleweight division is starting to take a lot of steam going ahead, and it's going to be really interesting in the next few months.
Yeah, I echo those sentiments. Like I say, a great win, and hopefully, Luis Arias bounces back a little bit smarter, a little bit better. We certainly wish him all the very best for his comeback, which I'm sure will be sometime early of next year. Just before we wrap up the review part, I just want to go over to the predictions. Of course, the prediction league now. I had a shocking prediction league last weekend. I picked Miller to win on points. That didn't happen. I picked Jacobs to win by knockout. That didn't happen. I picked Liam Williams to win on points. That didn't happen. I picked Josh Taylor to win on points. That didn't happen. The only one I got right was Beterbiev to win by knockout, which, like I say, really and truly, I don't think it should have happened. I think really it could have gone the distance. It was only the last 23 seconds or so that actually got me a point there. But anyway, Ayaz did better than me. He picked Jacobs to win on points and Liam Smith to win on points, so he gets 2 points. I get 1, but incredibly, once again, the listeners outdo us here. They picked Big Baby to win by knockout. That happened. They picked Beterbiev by knockout and Josh Taylor by knockout. So really, really impressive predictions from our listeners. And the league at the moment, it currently stands at, I'm in third place with 12 points. Ayaz is with 13 points in second place. And the listeners booming ahead with 15 points now. But again, there's going to be a few points up for grabs this weekend. We will get onto that in part 2, of course. Anyway, that wraps up the review. And the last thing to do before we end part 1, of course, is to welcome guest number 1. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the undefeated and current WBO featherweight champion of the world, Mr. Oscar Valdez. Oscar, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Hey, it's my pleasure, sir. It's my pleasure. So, Oscar, sometimes when I speak to people for the first time, I like to ask boxers, how did you get into boxing in the very beginning? How young were you when you first put on a pair of gloves?
I got into boxing because my father and my family are very big boxing fans, and my dad was also a boxer. He never went professional. He was a great amateur fighter, and he would go to the gym a lot. So that's how it all started. Just trying to follow my dad's footsteps, just following him to the gym, and it really just happened out of nowhere. Just going to the gym, and they threw a pair of gloves on me. We just was sparring with a couple of kids, and we realized that I had a little bit of talent. When I was 8 years old. When I was 9, I had my first amateur fight, which I lost. My first 4 fights as an amateur, I lost. It was a point where I thought, boxing wasn't for me. But I'm very glad that I never gave up, and I always try to follow my dreams, and it lead to me to where I am right now.
Yeah, it's been a seriously interesting journey. Now, in the amateurs, obviously you fought some great fighters. Some of the guys that you fought in the amateurs are now doing great things in their pro careers. Of course, you fought the likes of John Joe Nevin, Joseph Diaz, Vasyl Lomachenko, of course. How good are those guys? What was it like to share the ring with those guys, Oscar?
Those experiences fighting these great fighters, these great fighters like Lomachenko, like John Joe Nevins, Joseph Diaz, and even other guys that are not very known for some reason, but there are great talents. Like I've fought some guys from Thailand and from Uzbekistan and Cuba, and all these fighters, are doing good as a professional. So all those experiences that I had as an amateur has helped me a lot now as a professional, because I fought the best. I fought the best as an amateur, and I fought all different types of styles. Southpaws, orthodox, short, tall, different type of boxers that want to box, that could brawl. And that, I got a lot of experience being a 2-time Olympian. It has definitely helped me a lot as a professional.
And of course, you turned pro in November of 2012, so you've been a pro for 5 years this month. Now, by July 2014, you were 11-0 with 11 knockouts before running into Juan Ruiz. Now, of course, that fight was the first time that you went the distance. It was only an 8-rounder. Since that fight, every fight you've been in, which is there's been another 11 fights since that fight. Every fight you've been in, you've either knocked somebody out or you've been down yourself and got up to win. So it's safe to say that you really do bring the action and the excitement when you fight, Oscar.
I guess it just comes out naturally because my intentions obviously are never to fall down, and my intentions are always just to win. It doesn't really matter if I knock them down or knock them out. My main goal is just to get that win and have my hands up in the air and just come back to my family. That's all I really want. But for some reason, we have done great fights, what the fans like. So, it just comes out naturally, just working hard in the gym and just doing my best in the gym. The fights come on its own. And, I've had 2 great fights this year. And, I'm thankful with God because I came with the hands up and I won the fight.
Absolutely. It's you've got a lot of boxing skill, and of course that Mexican blood means that you can fight also. Now I want to throw a fun fact in here right now, Oscar. You of course stopped Jose Ramirez in quicker time than Lomachenko could stop him. You also stopped Evgeny Gradovich in quicker time than Lee Selby could, and you also stopped Chris Avalos in 5 rounds, and Leo Santa Cruz recently needed 8 rounds to get rid of him. Sometimes those little facts don't really mean much, but you're knocking people out quicker than some of the other champions who perhaps have got bigger names than yourself. Do you take anything from those facts there? I find it very impressive.
To be honest, I just I'm always just trying to worry about myself. Never try to compare myself to my other rivals, such as Leo Santa Cruz, like in the future maybe Lomachenko. Just worry about myself, And that's another fun fact that I realized. I didn't know that. Yeah, I'm not faster than these guys, but it's good to know. I know I got somewhat of a punch, and helping me out. But what can I say? It's just another great fact for me, knowing that I stopped them earlier. But a lot of these fighters that I fought don't have a big name, but they're all great fighters. They're tough opponents. But a lot of these times, just because we stopped them in the 3rd round or 4th round, doesn't mean they were great. They were great talent, but. Just always trying to learn something different from each fight.
And in your last 4 fights, you've also beaten 2 unbeaten fighters. Matias Rueda for the vacant world title, who you stopped in 2 rounds, which was an incredible win. You've since then successfully defended your title 3 times against Osawa Mariaga, and most recently taking the O of Genesis Savania, who was actually a little bit better than what I thought he was going into that fight. Which fight would you say so far in your career, Oscar, that you've learnt the most from, being 23-0 with 19 beautiful knockouts?
One fight in particular that I love, and just because he was an ex-world champion, I think that was my first real tough fight. Was with Granny Granovich. It wasn't for the world title, but he had just recently lost a title with Lee Selby, so we knew he was going to be a tough fighter, and we stopped him in the 4th round, I believe. And I expected a lot more. I was going in there very concentrating, knowing that I meant to be a world champion. I wanted to accomplish my dream. And again, Granovich was in the way, so he wanted to come back. He wanted to jump back from that loss that he had with Lee Selby. And he wasn't no easy fighter, but I had chances to knock him down and then stop the fight. And that was a very a great experience in my career, even though it wasn't for the world title. The next fight was for the world title, but the fight that I've loved the most is with getting Granovich.
Yeah, that was a very, very impressive performance, as I just said there. Now, I read online recently that Bob Arum wants you to fight 3 times in 2018. I think that it's been rumoured you may be returning to the ring in February at some point. Am I accurate with that, Oscar?
Well, I do really want to fight 3 times a year. So something that we've had a conversation. I want to stay as much as active as I can. This is what I love to do. I love boxing, I love fighting, I love being in the ring, in the arenas, and that's my lifestyle. So if I can stay active next year, I'm up for it. I've said that with my manager, Frank Esposa, my father. That's a great part of my team, and also with Bob Arum. We're up to it. We want to fight 3 times a year. I want all the big names. If it was for me, I would love to unify my titles. There's a lot we can do. There's a lot of great names out there, and I'm just waiting for my turn. I want to fight anybody that says he's the best.
And just quickly, you are looking at getting back in there in February, is that right?
Well, we don't know dates. If it's possible, February, maybe March. I'll leave that to my promoter, but I'll be ready. These days, even though we're not fighting this year, I'm trying to stay as much as active as possible. I'm going to a gym every day, running, and staying active as much as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I want to ask you about some of the other fighters in your division. I know that you like the big names. There's a lot of British fighters at featherweight with pretty big names. I'm not sure how big they are in Mexico, but of course you've got the likes of Carl Frampton, Lee Selby, Scott Quigg, Josh Warrington coming through at the moment. Are any of those guys on your hit list?
I could choose, I'd rather choose Lee Selby. Nothing personal with him. I've actually met the guy. He's a great guy, a great fighter, a true champion. Got nothing bad to say about him, but he holds a title. And I don't like what it's called. There's 4 champions. I want it to be like back in the days when there was only 1 champion. So if I could choose one out of all the UK fighters, I would choose Lee Selby just because he has a belt. And obviously, if Frampton's in the mix, of course I would want to fight him. But those are my priorities. If it's Scott Quigg, if it's anybody else, I don't mind fighting anybody. I'm definitely not scared of nobody, and I'm willing to fight anybody. That's what I'm trying to say. But if I could choose, I'd rather choose a title holder to unify my belt.
And of course, you've also got the likes of Leo Santa Cruz, Abner Mares, which both make for great fights for the Mexican fans. Of course, you've also got Gary Russell Jr. He's also a champion who, he's doing really well, but he's pretty inactive at the moment. Who is actually the top guy on your hit list, including all the champions, not just UK, but who is the number 1 guy you'd like to fight if you had it your way, Oscar?
If I had it my way, and I really don't like saying it this much because I know it's maybe impossible because of the promoters. But if it was for me, I'd rather fight Gary Russell. Why Gary Russell? Because he has a green belt, the WBC belt. Every fighter out there wants that belt. But obviously, if I have the chance to fight with with Leo Santa Cruz that has the WBA belt, of course I want to fight him. But these are fighters that it's going to be hard to make because of promotional problems, maybe TV networks that are going to get in the way. So I want to be as much realistic as I can. I think the only one that's possible right now is Frampton. So that's why I mentioned him. That's the reason I mentioned more his name, because it's a more possible fight. And so that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the big names. If I can, I'd rather fight a guy that's a title holder. But it really all does come to just fighting anybody. I'm the world champion. I'll literally fight anybody.
So you believe that in a most realistic world, do you think that the next big name you will be sharing a ring with is likely to be Carl Frampton? Is that right?
That's right.
Okay. Coming down to the last couple of questions now, Oscar, you're also the face of an energy drink called Wildcat, which is actually, I didn't know this, but it's actually a British company that, if I'm not mistaken, are quite big in America. Is it pretty cool being a face of an energy drink?
Oh, well, it's good. They were with me when I became a world champion. I'm being very grateful with them. They're looking at me and trying to be a face of a brand that's from UK, and it really does help me out a lot, getting more fans from the UK. And I'm very grateful for them giving the chance to sponsor me in my world title fight. But it just feels great being noticed like that.
Yeah, of course. More exposure, the better. Now, I want to put you on the spot a little bit here, Oscar. I don't know how good you are in terms of UK boxing history, but I like to ask this question to everybody that we speak to from overseas. Who would you say is your favourite UK fighter from any era? It can be a guy that's been retired for years and years. It can be a guy that's still fighting now. Completely up to you.
I like a lot of Amir Khan. I'm a big Amir Khan fan, just because of what he's done. He went to Olympics when he was 17 years old, got the silver medal, and he has a great professional career. I've actually said that he's one of the best fighters out there till this day. He's a danger to anybody. Obviously we all know his chin was a problem, but he's definitely right now one of my favorite UK fighters.
Yeah, another really exciting fighter, a man with huge cojones, Amir Khan. He will fight anybody. And the last question I've got for you now is not really a proper question, but I like to tell this to guys that we speak to also. Anything that you want to tell your UK fans? There'll be a lot of guys over here listening to this interview. What's your message to the UK supporters that you've got?
Yeah, I've always wanted to say this stuff. In the boxing world, UK, Mexico, USA, Puerto Rico, boxing fans are the toughest fans to convince. I've always said the boxing fans are very. You can't make one mistake because you're gonna get criticized in boxing. The boxing fans. But if I could say something, that that every time I go on social media, all UK's fans that are talking to me through Twitter, through Instagram, through all the social media like Snapchat, I've got nothing but good comments and good. I felt the love from UK, and I'm very grateful for that. I want to say to everyone, thank you, and I'm willing to put up good fights. It doesn't really matter where, when, who it is, but just grateful for the fans that I got in UK, and just from having me, I'll always give my best to keep on trying to put good fights.
Yeah, the UK fans certainly recognise a good fighter, and it'd be great, hopefully, to see your name in the mix, or yourself over here in the UK fighting some of these guys that we've got. But listen, Oscar, it's been a real pleasure speaking with you. We'll be looking out for what's next in your career, of course. Thank you for your time, and we'll catch up again very soon.
Oh, thank you for having me here, and anytime I'm willing to take an interview.
Okay, now it's time for part 2 on this week's show. This part, of course, the preview part. Ayaz isn't here, but he sent me the most recent news anyway. So, of course, we've got Stephen Smith facing Francisco Vargas on December 9th. That's going to be on the undercard of Orlando Salido's next fight. Also, we have Katie Taylor defending her world title against Jessica McCaskill. That one's going to be at York Hall. A world title fight at York Hall. I'm looking forward to that. That's on December 13th, which I think is a Wednesday. It's a bit of a strange one there. And on the undercard of that, by the way, a really good fight at light heavyweight, Jake Bull against Miles Shinkwin. That's a fight I really like. Also, the legendary cut man Rafael Garcia's died, unfortunately, this week. He was aged 88. He's the guy who always was seen in the Mayweather gym, always in the corner with Floyd Mayweather. He's the guy who's he's like a little old guy who sort of used to wear one of those, I don't even know what the hats are called, but I call them like an old man hat, and it had like 1,000 little badges attached to it. You've definitely seen him. Yeah, he's unfortunately passed away. He was a guy that had been in many corners of some really good fighters. I think even Roberto Duran, so he's been around a long time. Also, the 2 opponents have been announced. The opponents, of course, for James DeGale and Lee Selby. Those guys will be taking on... Lee Selby will be taking on Eduardo Ramirez, who's a undefeated Mexican. He's 20-0 with 3 draws. We'll talk about it more, closer to the time. But this guy, Eduardo Ramirez, has only just in his last fight got a draw. It was a split draw with Leduan Barthélemy, who was 13-0. That's actually the brother of former world champion Rances Barthélemy. So he seems to be a decent fighter here. Eduardo Ramirez, another fighter that Lee Selby takes on, who we're not really aware of them as being a big name kind of thing, but these guys that he takes on are all potential banana skins. It's, we want to see him fight someone who we've heard of, who we know comes with a bit of danger. This guy, people are going to say, he's going to probably beat him easy, when really he's probably a lot better than we're going to give him credit for before the fight. And James DeGale will be taking on Caleb Truax. I'm not quite sure I'm saying that right, but his record's 28-3 with 2 draws. He got stopped in the first round by Anthony Durrell. He got stopped in the 12th round by Danny Jacobs. He also got beat by Jermaine Taylor back in 2012. Hasn't really got any good wins on his record, so I think that should be quite a routine defence there for James DeGale. Hopefully we see him in something a little bit more enticing in the new year. Anyway, that's it for the news. We tried to dive through that as quick as possible. We're now going to move on to the previewing. And talking of a man that we just mentioned there, Anthony Durrell, 30-1 with 1 draw, fights this Friday, actually, so just tomorrow. It's going to be on USA Fox Sports 1. He takes on Dennis Duglin, who's 20-5. Dennis Duglin was on the show, I think it was last week now. Dennis Duglin, really nice guy. That's a 10-rounder there. All the very best to Dennis Duglin. Moving over now to the Hotel Jaragua in the Dominican Republic. Guillermo Jones, 40-3 with 2 draws. A man that seems to really be, under the radar. I mean, he's been around for, of course, a very long time, but it just seems like I often think he's retired, but then he ends up popping up with a fight out of nowhere. Anyway, he's taking on a guy who is 10-2 with 2 draws, a man called Talo Pereira. This one's going to be for the vacant WBA Federatin heavyweight title. Moving over now to Poland in a venue that I'm not even going to try and pronounce, to be honest. On this bill, Thomas Adamek, 51-5. He's still fighting on. He's fighting for the vacant Republic of Poland international heavyweight title against Fred Cassie, a man that I saw recently, most recently in the ring against Hughie Fury, and that seems like a long time ago now. Fred Fred Cassie 18-6 with 1 draw. That's a 10-rounder there. To be honest, that's a hard fight to call. I mean, Adamek's so shot now. Fred Cassie, I mean, he's quite limited. That's going to be an interesting fight to some degree. Also on that undercard, Adam Bowski as well. He's a Polish prospect, undefeated, 10-0. He takes on Demetrius Banks, who's 9-2. Moving over now to the SSE Arena in Belfast, Northern Ireland. Who's on this bill? We've got John O'Carroll, he's 14-0, his opponent yet to be announced. Paddy Barnes, 4-0, defending his WBO European flyweight title, his opponent yet to be announced. It's a bit of a shame there. There's a good fight on the bill. Darryl Williams, 16-0, takes on Lennox Clark, 15-0 with 1 draw. This one's for the English super middleweight title, the belt that Williams beat Jermaine Smile for, so that should be quite good. Zelani Tete takes on a guy called Siboniso Gonya, who's 11-1 and the one loss. I think he got beat. I'm not sure if he got stopped or he lost on a decision, but anyway, this guy Gonya, he's only 11-1, and the guy he lost to had quite a poor record. I think this is going to be an easy win for Zelani Tete. I think he's going to probably stop him in style, and again, he's doing it in Northern Ireland, so it's some kind of attempt really to kind of say, look, I'm the best bantamweight fighter in the world. Where are you, Ryan Burnett? That's kind of what Frank Warren wants to do there. So Zelani Tete 25-3. I'm sure he'll be 26-3 this time next week. Carl Frampton, of course, the return of the Jackal, 23-1. He takes on Horatio Garcia, 33-3 with 1 draw. I don't know too much about Horatio Garcia. Diego, do you know much about him at all? Sorry to kind of put you on the spot like that.
No, man, I've not really heard about Horatio Garcia, to be honest.
Yeah, no, me neither. I mean, I've looked at his record again. He's one of these South American fighters that, he's got a couple of names on his record, but he hasn't really done anything that's jumped out to impress me, kind of thing. He lost to Joseph Diaz. He got a draw against Eric Ruiz. I mean, he's quite limited. He lost to Hasegawa, actually. I didn't know that. That was back in 2015. Yeah, I mean, like I say, he hasn't really got the wins on his record, but he hasn't been stopped. He hasn't been stopped in his 33 or 37. Well, it's 33 wins, 37 fights in total. Like I say, 33-3 with 1 draw. I've got to predict on this fight. Ayaz has already sent me his predictions. For me, I think Carl Frampton's going to probably win this fight on points. Ayaz has gone with Carl Frampton to win by knockout. And our listeners, I've actually asked a poll on Twitter, as per usual now for the Prediction League. And our poll on Twitter, our listeners have actually gone with Carl Frampton to win by knockout as well. So hopefully for me, because I'm quite behind now, hopefully for me, Frampton wins on points. I think Frampton, since he's moved up in weight, I don't really think he's carried the power up. I mean, I don't want to ever say that he was like a massive power puncher. I think when he stepped it up in level, he's really he's not really the puncher that we perhaps first thought he was. But no, he's a brilliant fighter, Frampton. Listen, he's probably Britain's best fighter, to be completely honest, pound for pound. Yeah, so I think he's going to probably win that fight quite handily over the distance. And of course, on this bill as well, it's a double world title card, this one, and a European title's on the line as well. Jerwin Ancajas, he's 27-1 with 1 draw. He takes on the brother of Michael Conlan, Jamie Conlan, 19-0. It's for the IBF World Super Flyweight title. This is a fight that we've got to predict as well. Ayaz goes with Jamie Conlan to win on points. Our listeners have been quite harsh. They've actually gone with Ancajas to win by knockout, which I thought was quite surprising. I am going to go with Ancajas on points, which nobody really thinks will happen, but I'm going to go with Ancajas on points. I can't really see Jamie Conlan being knocked out, but listen, one thing is for sure, Jamie Conlan always brings an exciting fight. He often, neglects his defence and takes a load of punches in the face. He's a serious little warrior, and hopefully he does become the super flyweight champion of the world. But it's a real test, this one, and it's some brilliant boxing being brought over to Northern Ireland for our Northern Ireland listeners. listeners. It's great that the boxing's coming to you. Hopefully, you can get down there yourselves. It should be a great night of action. Moving over now to the USA at the Crossroads Arena in Mississippi, USA. Former world champion DeMarcus Chop Chop Corley. Unfortunately, he's been fighting on a little bit too long now, in my opinion, but he's 50 wins and 28 losses, his record, with 1 draw. Of course, he took on Floyd Mayweather and a bunch of other guys. He takes on a guy who's 8-32 with 2 draws. Not quite sure what that's about. It's an 8-rounder there. All the very best to DeMarcus Corley. Moving over now to the Claridge Hotel and Casino in Atlantic City, New Jersey, USA. One fight to mention on this bill, Devin Haney, the undefeated prospect, 18-0. There's been all sorts of stories about Devin Haney, perhaps. I don't want to start spreading stuff, but I did hear that Devin Haney apparently knocked Gervonta Davies out or down in sparring, and Devin Haney's only like 18 years old or something like that, so definitely one to watch out for. He's in an 8-rounder against a guy called Taiwo Ali, who is 21-5 with 1 draw. I do want to see Devin Haney step it up a bit now, especially if these sparring stories are true. Moving over now to the Cosmopolitan of Las Vegas in Nevada, USA. On this bill, there's really one fight to mention. Top of the bill, Julian J Rock Williams, 23-1 with 1 draw. Of course, we saw him step it up against Jermall Charlo. He got knocked out in that fight. He takes on former IBF world champion Ishe Smith, 29-8. That's going to be a 10-rounder there. It's on Bounce TV in the US. It's a Mayweather card, this one. Julian Williams is the travelling fighter. We will be speaking to Julian Williams in a short while. This is a fight, again, that we've asked our listeners about and we've asked ourselves about. I've gone with, I think Julian Williams is going to become the first man to stop Ishe Smith. Our listeners believe that Ishe Smith, I think they were going with Ishe Smith. Let me just quickly check. Our listeners think that, it's a tie between Ishe Smith and J Rock to win this one, both on points. So what I'm going to do is retweet it, and hopefully we get someone, hopefully we get some more votes on there just to nudge it. But yeah, I'm going to go with a knockout win. And Ayaz has gone with a points win. So we've both gone with J Rock there. I'm going to just retweet that. Hopefully by the end of the show, we have a definitive choice. That's it for that one. Moving over now to Tuesday of next week. It's actually going to be the 21st of November. Just the couple last fights to mention now. 21st of November, so by the time next week's show goes out, these fights would have happened. There's one fight happening at the Coliseum in St. Petersburg, Florida, USA. It's going to be on Fox Sports 1. One fight to mention on this bill, really. Return of the former world champion, Devon Alexander, 26-4. He takes on Walter Castillo, who's also 26-4 with 1 draw. That's a very tough fight to come back to, in my opinion, for Devon Alexander. Again, he's a fighter really that was really good at one point and kind of just seems to have lost his head, and he's been out the ring for such a long time now. I think maybe about 2 years, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, hopefully he pulls off the win. I'd like to see Devon back in the picture, really. I hope he hasn't ballooned up in weight too much at all. Hopefully he comes back, because he was a good fighter at one stage, and like I say, his head just kind of was off the game a little bit, and he racked up a couple of losses against guys where if he was on his A game, he probably wouldn't have lost. Also on this bill, by the way, Gary Russell Jr.'s 2 brothers, Gary Antoine Russell and Antonio Russell. They're both on this bill. Their opponents yet to be announced. They're both in 6-rounders. They're both undefeated as well. One of them's 2-0. That's Gary Antoine Russell, and Antonio Russell is 9-0. So again, we will talk about these fights on next week's show when they have happened. And the final couple of fights to mention now on this preview part. This one again on Tuesday, next Tuesday. I don't think this one's going to be televised, but it's a show in the US. It's at the Sands Bethlehem Event Center in Pennsylvania. A guy that was on the show recently, Alantis Fox, the guy that unfortunately lost to Demetrius Andrade. I say unfortunately, I like both guys, but unfortunately for Alantis Fox, he lost that fight. His brother, Michael Fox, is 14-0. If I'm not mistaken, I think he's actually fighting at 140. Diego, this guy, I'm telling you about this guy, Michael Fox. He's 14-0. As I say, I think he's at 140. Do you know how tall this guy is? He's 140. Bear in mind.
No, I'm not sure. How tall is he?
6'3.5", and he's 140, which is
wow.
just mad. Yeah, it's mad.
That's
And his brother his brother, his brother's at middleweight and he's 6'4", but like I say, he came up short to Demetrius Andrade a couple of weeks back now. So all the very best to Michael Fox. Like I say, 14-0, he takes on Marlon Aguas. And on the main event here, the only reason I've mentioned it, Diego, is because there's a guy here called Frank D'Alba who's 22-2 with 2 draws. He's taking on a guy called Ivan Najera. I'm wondering if it's some sort of cousin of yours. He's 17-3.
Oh, Bam Bam Najera. No, he's not, man. He's not. But he's still, he had, initially there was sort of a bit of hype around him, but he took some losses, man. I think he's just on that comeback trail, man. But no connection.
No connection. All right. Well, anyway, because he's got the same surname as you, we're gonna give him the best of luck. So all the very best there to Ivan Najera. Anyways, that wraps up the previewing. Like I say, I've tried to fly through the previewing a little bit here. Tried to go through it as quick as possible. We've been without Ayaz, but we've still managed. Again, we've done the predictions, of course, as always. Best of luck to everybody that's given a prediction. Like I say, by the end of the show, once we've got past this next interview, hopefully we have a determined result on the poll between Julian Williams and Ishe Smith. But like I say, Diego, thanks once again for coming on the show. Thank you once again for filling Ayaz's shoes. You've done it a few times, and like I say, thank you every time. So it's now time to say goodbye to Diego. Like I say, Diego, thanks, my man.
It's a pleasure, man.
All right, my man. Excellent stuff. Right. Okay, now, just before we end part 2, there's one last thing to do, and that, of course, is to welcome guest number 2. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the former IBF Junior Middleweight World Title Challenger, Mr. Julian J Rock Williams. Julian, welcome to the show.
How you doing?
I'm good, my man. I'm good, my man. It's my pleasure. So, Julian, obviously, you've got a big fight coming up this weekend, but if we just travel back to just before the Charlo fight, I remember you badly wanted to fight one of the Charlos. You finally got the shot, and to be honest, going into that fight, a lot of people were split on who they thought would win the fight. Everybody knew it was going to be a good fight going in. Unfortunately for you, despite it being a good fight in the first few rounds, you walked onto a jab in the second. Ultimately, the fight got stopped in the 5th. By the way that you got knocked down in that 5th round, the first knockdown from the right uppercut, I was actually shocked that you got up. It was a really good shot. How did you assess that fight, though, J-Rock? What positives can you take out of that?
I thought it was a close fight, a fight that I was edging, got a little bit impatient, and it cost me. I took out of that fight that I know I belong at that level. You know what I mean? I didn't get outclassed and beat up. I got caught with a good shot, and sometimes in boxing that happens.
Yeah, no, of course. And, you gave Charlo a lot to think about in those early rounds. You caught him with some good shots yourself, and he clearly respected your power. Also, as I said, you showed some great heart that night, first proper step up for you. Now, I know it was a bad night to look back on, and obviously, I don't want to kind of dwell on it too much, but would you say that you've learned stuff from it? Has it made you a smarter fighter in any way?
Absolutely.
In which way? Can you talk about that?
Well, just more so having patience in the ring. You know what I mean? And just letting things play out instead of forcing certain shots. You know what I mean? That's about it, really.
Yeah, no, of course. It's as the phrase goes, they say it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. Of course, boxing. So as I mentioned a moment ago, there, J Rock, you will be fighting this Saturday on a Mayweather show against the former IBF World Champion Ishe Smith. What do you know about Ishe, Julian? Have you ever sparred him at all?
I never sparred Ishe. I know he's a rough, tough veteran. He's coming off a couple of wins himself. He's an ex-world champion, and he's a good fighter.
And as you say there, he's a bit of a veteran. I was looking down his career today. It's probably, the first time in quite a while I've looked down his record. I couldn't believe it. He's almost 40 years old. Obviously, he's been a pro for 17 years. When you look down his down his career at some of the names he's fought some really good fighters. He's only lost 8 fights, but he's never been stopped. Do you believe that you can become the first man to stop him?
Absolutely. I think anybody can be knocked out in the boxing ring. Just a couple of fights ago, Austin Trump was never stopped either. You know what I mean? And he got stopped. Anybody can be stopped.
Yeah, that was a great
boxing.
fight.
You hit the guy. That was a great fight, right? You hit the guy in the right spot. You get him out. It's boxing.
And providing you get through this fight, of course, you're ranked number 6 in the WBC, number 8 in the IBF, number 13 in the WBO. All three of those sanctioning bodies have got different champions. You've got Jermall Charlo with the WBC, Jarrett Hurd with the IBF, and of course, WBO champion is Miguel Cotto. Who do you want to fight most out of those guys, providing you get through this?
I think it's all about equal. You know, I'll fight whoever provide me with the opportunity. But I haven't really thought about who I'd rather fight. You know, because I'm focused on Ishe Smith.
Yeah, now that's, you know, I'm happy to hear you say that. That is the way it should be.
Yeah.
But is there any? I mean, like I say, kind of the same question again. Is there anybody at all that you really do want to fight aside from Ishe Smith in the division? Doesn't have to be a title holder.
Right now, it's just Ishe Smith.
Okay. Fair enough. And by the way, I wasn't quite sure. Who are you being promoted by at the moment, J Rock?
I'm signed with Al Heyman.
Al Heyman, okay.
I don't have a promoter, but I'm with Al Heyman.
Because I know this card's, I think it's TGB Promotions and Floyd Mayweather, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And by the way, do you see your future definitely at light middleweight, or do you see yourself moving up at all?
I think I wanna win the title here first, and then I'll definitely move up.
And what are you making of Jermall Charlo's impact up at middleweight? I know he's only had the one fight. He looked okay. The guy he thought was injured, but do you think he can do big things up there?
Who knows? Probably, maybe. Got to fight the fights.
And I want to ask you.
I think he got the ability to do good things, though.
Do you respect him more now since fighting him?
Do I respect him more?
Yeah, since fighting him. I know that before he wasn't in your good books. Let's just say.
No, I mean, I respect him as the same as I did, you know, as before, you know. I don't respect him no more, no less.
Is that a fight that you do want down the line to try and avenge, or are you not really too bothered?
Come on, man. Of course I do. That's a no-brainer. Of course I want that back.
So your dream then, I'm getting from you now. Your dream is to win a world title here, move up, and then have the rematch at middleweight against, the turkey I want to call him now because you're on the line, Jermall Charlo. Right
now, the dream is to beat Ishe Smith on Saturday night.
Okay.
Ask me about my dreams after I beat Ishe Smith.
Okay, my man. Okay. And I want to ask your opinion also on a fight. I want to ask which fight are you looking forward to most, actually, and then we can talk about the fight. Are you looking forward more to Miguel Cotto taking on Saddam Ali, or are you looking at Billy Joe Saunders and David Lemieux? Which fight between those two, get your taste, kind of thing?
Neither, honestly. I'm more looking forward to Rigondeaux and Lomachenko.
Okay, I'm going to talk about that one. How do you see that one playing out? Great fight.
That's just a great fight. I mean, I don't even know how. I don't know how that's going to play out.
Yeah, it's certainly a fight there that everybody's torn on, everybody's split on. Is there any fighters that you're into watching right now? Who's your
I'm just a boxing fan. I'm just a boxing fan, so I watch all boxing. I don't watch nobody specifically.
Who are some of your favorites?
Of course, Rigondeaux. I like Lomachenko. I'm an Andre Ward fan. I like Kovalev.
Oh yeah.
Linares is definitely one of my top 5 favorites. I mean, I'm just a boxing fan.
Yeah. Would you be interested in the Mikey Garcia-Linares fight if that hopefully happens?
Mikey Garcia and who else? That's an amazing fight. It's a super fight, if you ask me.
Yeah, beautiful fight. Hopefully it does happen at some point. And just coming down to the last couple questions I've got for you now, J Rock. I like to ask this question to everybody that we speak to from overseas. I'm putting you on the spot a little bit here. Who would you say is your favourite UK fighter from any era? It can be a guy that's been retired for years. It can be a guy who's still fighting now, any era.
I would say I got 2 of them. Probably about Prince Naseem and Joe Calzaghe.
Oh, yeah, 2 very popular answers, actually. Everybody says Prince Naseem, but sometimes we do get Joe Calzaghe. What did you like most about those guys? Tremendous fighters.
Man, Prince Naseem just had so much confidence, and he was so entertaining, and and he can actually fight. That's what boxing is about. People want to be entertained, and people want knockouts, and he gave them both. I think special fighters like him don't really come around too often. I wouldn't teach my son how to fight like that. But what he had, you can't teach. You can't teach confidence. Something you got to be born with, or something that has to grow over time. You know, so I think for just from that aspect, you know, he was I was a big fan of his. And Calzaghe, you know, is the same thing. You know, he did come over to the U.S. a little bit late, but when he came over here, he fought everybody. And more importantly, he knows how to win a fight. And he knows how to dig down deep. He gets knocked down early in fights. Sometimes he gets up and shake it off, and he fights his butt off. And he knows how to win. You got to respect the guy who can just win. You know, but he was entertaining as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Calzaghe, one of the, I don't think he gets too much credit these days, unfortunately. But of course, as you say there, he, retired undefeated, one of Britain's best, absolutely. Right, coming down to the last thing I just want to say to you, really, J Rock. Obviously, I'm sure that you know this anyway, but British fight fans are, amongst some of the best fight fans in the world. I'm sure you've got loads and loads of British fans. I'm sure you've got loads of British fans. I just really wanted to give you an opportunity to send out a message to your UK fans that may be listening.
I just hope all the UK fans tune in however you can and watch me put on a spectacular performance and just a great show and get a win.
And if people
in spectacular fashion.
If people aren't already following you on social media, where can they follow you, J Rock?
Follow me on Instagram at J Rock Boxing. And follow me on Twitter at J Rock Boxing. I'm also on Facebook too, at Julian Williams.
Okay, so everybody get following. Okay, listen, Julian, it's been a real pleasure speaking with you, my friend. Best of luck for Saturday. Thank you for your time, and we'll catch up sometime after.
No problem. Yep, thank you.
Okay, and this wraps up episode 109 of the BoxHard Podcast. I've been your host, Joey Coastman. Diego Najera has been with me for the duration of the show also. Big thank you to him. A big thank you to our two guests on this week's show also, the undefeated featherweight world champion Oscar Valdez and the former world title challenger Julian J Rock Williams. Last week, we have to remember that Smith versus Williams happened, and I was back in Williams. This week, Ishe Smith versus Julian Williams is happening. 2 back-to-back weeks of Smith versus Williams, and yet again I'm riding with Williams. I think I was the only one to notice that coincidence, but anyways, thank you so much for listening. Next week we will have a little surprise on the show. We're going to be doing something that we've never done before, so stay tuned for that. The Smith and Williams poll got an extra couple of votes, by the way, and the listeners have now gone with a Williams points win. Best of luck with that prediction. Enjoy your weekends, people, and we will see you next week.